Well, hello there. Welcome to On the Beat, the podcast that uncovers full frontal male nudity in cinema. My name is Laura, and I am joined by the one and only Ryan.
Good day.
Good day to you, sir.
Yeah, we're all up in the English.
Good day, sir.
Good day. We're all good eye. No, it's not Australian. No, it'd be... No, we're all up in that English today. We're all up in it.
We're going to have a full English today.
full English. Full Englishman.
Full Englishman.
Full Englishman.
I know a couple of guys have a full Englishman in this film, which is the 1987 drama, may I say romantic drama, Maurice. And you're going to have to slap me in the face every time I say Maurice, because I'm going to get slapped today.
I mean, I was going to call it Maurice. It's spelled Maurice, though. Otherwise, it's Maurice. Maurice. I've had to put in it, it's kind of like that Google Translate thing. I've had to put in brackets the actual, the phonetic reading of Maurice above the title so that I say it correctly.
Morris.
Yes. It's...
Maurice.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's the spelling of Morris, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's fine. I mean, we'll just have to deal with it. And for as long as I've known that this movie has existed, I thought that Hugh Grant was the star of this film.
Because he's on the poster.
He's on the poster. He's on the covers.
He's on our indent.
But he's not Maurice.
No, that's also one of the...
so tricky.
That poster is also one of the nicest looking posters. Who's the other guy? Who's the incredibly uninspired choice to play the the titular character?
That would be James Wilby, who plays Maurice.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you the rest of the cast.
Yeah, he's a bit flat. Mr. Pancake, as I've called him.
He was the second choice, which I will explain later.
Yeah.
Hugh Grant, obviously. Rupert Graves, Denham Elliott, and Simon Callow are also in this film, directed by the one and only James Ivory.
Yes, and
I'm in the ivory trade. Give me more of that ivory.
Okay, I think that's
market
something
for some ivory.
That's something I'm going to have to cut out because someone could take that wildly out of context.
The James Ivory market.
We live in a social media era, Laura.
That's
someone
okay.
could just take that out, and
that is not the worst thing I've ever said.
And they'll just superimpose your picture on top of a horrible image of someone who's just shot an elephant, probably, and then they can just put that in a loop.
Okay.
I've just gave someone an idea. Anyway, if anyone might not have... Yes, this is a Merchant Ivory adaption of it. It's like the E.M. Forster book as well.
Absolutely, by the same name.
By the same name, and it's also this is another one of their adaptions, because Room with a View was exactly the same as well. And this you might not have remembered. This is what we would call a... It's because it's so sexy, you need to put a towel down, and if you don't, there's obviously a bit of a mess.
Okay, great.
A cleanup episode. And I'm not going to be going into James Ivory's filmography, or certainly the Merchant Ivory filmography. You want that in-depth information, you have to go all the way back to episode 17. Preferably watch it on YouTube, because it was penned as it was a video, like it was a phone-in video episode with Miriam, who's still in obviously Ireland at the time.
Yes.
And we did a Room with a View, and it was special.
I love that film very, very much. And guess what?
That Room with a View episode is episode 17. If you need a number there in order to find it slightly easier. But yes,
I love this film. I really liked it.
Maurice.
Absolutely.
I think the issue I have with Maurice just in general is I think the story's okay, although I have some issues with the ending. It's just a little too long.
It is incredibly long. It's 2+ hours. And
I didn't even say that about Play in the Fields of the Lord, which is almost like 4 hours long. And I never felt that film was too long. This is almost 2 hours and 20 minutes.
It's pretty long. We had to watch it in 2 parts because no one's got... Well, I have time for that. I do.
We were busy last night, and I was like, let's get headlong with this. We have things we want to do today. you know, and then I fell asleep maybe about an hour and 40 minutes into it.
You fell asleep right before it was about to get sexy. Okay, hold on. Before we get too deep,
Yeah.
I'm going to throw you the synopsis and the tagline. So, the
Okay.
synopsis pulled from Letterboxd is, after his lover rejects him, a young man trapped by the oppressiveness of Edwardian society tries to come to terms with and accept his sexuality.
Ooh, he felt trapped. He was oppressed. Ooh,
Oh, yeah, I don't know how... I don't know if he felt too oppressed, if I'm being honest.
as a privileged, like, high-class white man who had everything handed to him on a fucking silver plate, yes, I don't think he would have felt the real sense of oppression.
No, and I will talk about that a bit more. I don't think it's oppression that he felt. I think he just was in love with the wrong person. What I'm trying to say is that I don't think that Maurice's issue is the oppressiveness of Edwardian society more than it is the lover that isn't reciprocating his affections. I think that's his main issue. I don't think he necessarily felt the oppressiveness of Edwardian society in so much as he was sad that Clive didn't want to kiss him on the lips.
There's see, this is why you're a scientist, is that you're able to kind of put it into terms that you know, that make a lot more sense than I was able to. I'm just like I'm like a working class grunt. I don't understand anything.
Would you call yourself a scutter?
I'm kind of like a scutter. Yeah, I'm a fucking scutter. God, I wish I wasn't.
I want to
Like,
dive into this so bad. I'm so excited.
Okay.
So before we do, the tagline of this film is a love story of unforgettable passion.
Okay.
Which is weird. Okay.
It's a strange, that's a strange one. That's kind of like, we have 10 minutes before this goes to press. Just give us a tagline, please.
This is a weird film because it's a rare film in gay cinema, which, you know, spoilers abound, everybody, but this is a nice story. This is a nice story that came out in the mid to late 80s, where you just kind of have a great tale of love, romance, and your first love, and then finding someone who actually cares about you. And it's weird to find that, especially at that time. You've got like the height of the AIDS epidemic and the AIDS scare, and everyone's terrified.
Yeah.
You've got Thatcher causing all sorts of problems in England at the time of the film's release.
Yeah.
You know, obviously this film is not set then. The film starts in 1910. But it's a weird one because you see a gay film and we're almost so used to violence.
I guess so,
which is so fucked up.
Well, it's
and
like
sad.
Yeah, it's almost kind of tropey in a sense. And I mean, I would go back to look at, say, Brokeback Mountain, which I feel like, you know, you would hate to be like, that's an accurate depiction of what it would be like. But unfortunately, like, even just kind of going by today's standards, it's a fairly accurate depiction of how people view homosexuality and anyone that's classed as outside of, I guess, like, white people's societal norms of the nuclear family, that sort of idea.
I don't know about that. I just think that we don't have enough of these stories because these stories exist even in a world of oppression that we even live in now, right?
Yeah.
But not every story like that turns out to be sad and violent or that unrequited love. You have nice stories of people falling in love. Like, it occurs all the time. And so I like this because I like that you can just have a movie about people meeting each other and falling in love and you have a nice story. You have a romantic film. Boom, you're done.
Yeah. It's
you don't have to get anyone. No one has to die.
Similarly to A Room with a View, though, is that there's very little in the way of, I guess, like, tangible, like, cinematic conflict. Like, it's all kind of interwoven with this sense of drama. And certainly when the film starts, because I don't know, I find the film slightly kind of moot for the most part. Like, it's not. Period films in general I find to be slightly trite, but then when we kind of get to, like, closer near the end of this film, the story, and it starts to kind of pick up a little bit more pace, because you're like, oh no, who's going to out this couple? Who's going to do this? And Scudder's saying some stuff, and I'm shouting things like blackmail and all this sort of thing.
And I'm over here like, he just is sad. He loves him.
And I'm like, oh no, Scudder missed his boat to where was he going to go?
Buenos Aires.
Buenos Aires to do something with the church.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And I was just like, oh my God, he's going to find him hanging in the boathouse. But they didn't.
No.
Yeah.
It's just nice.
Well, I just immediately kind of go to, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just I immediately kind of go to that when you have these sort of like forbidden love stories.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that's kind of the problem. And this is why this is a beautiful, rare gem in the world of this type of cinema, because you can just have a nice story.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll be honest, there's a few things to really like in this film. I think the film looks nice.
Absolutely.
It's got a nice kind of I guess like it's kind of like muted palette, but I guess it's kind of like I wouldn't say like beige, but like pastels. Like it's kind of got that period pastel look about it.
Lots of green as well.
Lots of green, because he likes a bit of greenery, Mr. Ivory. But yeah, it's just, again, it's a very kind of meticulously designed. It's very, he even said in a couple of the featurettes and stuff that we watched that like this was kind of like their perfection of their visualization of this world. And it's not something that I think that comes naturally to James Ivory. James Ivory is an American, and I don't think he spent a lot of time in England, even though a few of his films are set in England during period England. This is Edwardian, I think it is.
Yes.
This is Edwardian period. So this is just before the advent of the Great War. Because there's like mumblings and stuff about, obviously there's a war on the horizon, but nothing ever kind of comes to it. None of these people are going off to war.
No.
But yeah, I like the fact that like this feels kind of meticulously kind of put together, and there's a real kind of distinct eye for detail. Yeah, it's just kind of, it's one of those, I think, like, if you like a film like this, you like a period piece, like, tonally, and in terms of, like, to the heights of which the story goes, like, I think this is incredibly easy watching, and if it's for you, I think that's fine.
This is a beautiful Sunday midday afternoon when it's, like, raining outside.
Yeah, it's
kind
of
of
like,
have a nice cheese platter and
kinda
watch
like,
some cute boys run around.
kind of like this morning, where it's been like pissing with rain. We were able to watch the sex scene unimpeded. I didn't
Thank
fall asleep to
God.
it. It's obviously better than the morning our neighbor's having right now, because he's like sanding down some like 2x4s or something outside in the rain, and all you can hear is.
I would way rather
outside.
have our morning with these lovely gentlemen.
100%. What do you think? I'm going to start building a house, which is obviously what he's trying to do, or I'm only assuming is what he's trying to do outside, is build a home.
There are a couple of things that I wanted to bring up before we talk about some of my favorite parts of this movie.
Yes.
But I feel like if you know James Ivory and you know these type of films, Room with a View specifically, and when you look at the main character of Maurice, played by James Wilby, you would go, I wonder if anyone else was meant to play that role. And if you were thinking Julian Sands, you're absolutely right, because that's who was originally going to play Maurice.
Yeah.
And they kind of put Wilby off to the side because they go, well, he looks too much like Julian Sands with the blonde hair. So he was never cast, but at the last minute, Sands backed out. James Ivory doesn't know why, but he goes, oh, that one guy that kind of looked like Julian would be a great choice. James Wilby and, oh my gosh, Hugh Grant were already friends.
Right,
From way back when. This is only Hugh Grant's second film. And the first film he was in, which I believe was called something I've written down somewhere that I'll find eventually. But he and James Wilby were in that film together.
Right, okay.
So.
I have zero issue with Hugh Grant's performance in this movie.
Oh, yeah. He is amazing.
Hugh Grant is one of the the saving elements of like the tedium of this movie. I feel like because there's something about, and I mean, I'm sure he's a really good actor, but there's just something about the titular character which just does not draw me in. Like, it does not, like, I just don't believe him.
He's just a
He's
little.
a lot of face.
I'm
and
sure
just
he's a wonderful human being. I just
Yeah.
think it was a little bit weak, I guess. But I think that's also his character.
I
He's,
guess.
you know,
There's a level of
Hugh Grant's
naivety.
Clive is the strong,
Yes.
determined character, and Morris is kind of just going along with the flow.
There's a lot of questions over some of the intelligence of these individuals. They question a lot of that over the course of the movie, where Clive, which is obviously Hugh Grant's character, he's incredibly intelligent, he's very smart, he's very quippy. And then obviously with Maurice, who's, he's not able to reach the heady heights of say, because he drops out of university, he's like...
He should have just apologized.
He's like,
honestly.
yeah, that's something where I was just like...
For skipping class, he goes, if you
what
just
a bad boy.
apologize,
Yeah.
I'll let you back in school, no problem. And he's like, no.
He's like, fuck it, I'm not fucking doing
And
that.
also, why wouldn't you apologize so you could stay with your best friend and potential lover? Why would you want to be separated like that? For no reason.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to be fair, when you are set for life, I don't know if you ever really have like those kind of measures of concerns. But was Denholm Elliott, was he Morris's father in the movie? Or no, I didn't think so. So
he's Dr. Barry.
He's Dr. Barry. So I'm
I
assuming...
don't know why he's so high build. Didn't see him a lot.
You didn't, but he's doing classic Denholm Elliott, who's like, because I think he's in Room with a View for like maybe 2 minutes or something like that.
A
He's
lot of
barely in
these,
it, yeah.
a lot of these folks are in Room
And
with
I'm pretty
a View.
sure like all I ever called him during the course of the movie was Marcus, like Dr. Marcus. That's all I'll ever remember him as Marcus from the Indiana Jones movie. But my main kind of thing with it is just like, it's a real shame that who they get to play Morris just isn't as engaging as the people around him are.
For sure.
Even Scudder. Even Scudder is like, you're kind of perplexed a little bit by him and his performance, and I quite enjoy that. There's some standout moments, I think, with Wilby. I think the final confrontation between himself and Morris and Clive in the drawing room is a pretty good scene, and it's kind of
the breakup.
Yeah, the breakup. Yeah. But I mean, I think that stuff's quite strong. It's just a shame. It's like, oh God, like it's like really the drudgery of the tedium of like what they do in their daily lives is really put into like harsh light when you see it performed by.
Okay, we don't need to keep taking a dump on this guy.
I'm not taking a dump. I'm just saying that like
Dumping
it's not.
on
It's just
Wilby
not.
Here.
It's not enlightening enough. And you say like Julian Sands is like the alternative to this as well, and it's like, yeah, maybe it would have been. Maybe it might have been better with Julian Sands.
Julian Sands is a very strong R.I.P. by the way, hard R.I.P. But he would have been a really strong character, so I think it would have played well. But, I mean, I think he was fine. I just thought he was a little bit weaker.
It's just a bit moot, yeah.
We talked about this a little bit in the Room with a View episode, but you know how Julian Sands and John Malkovich were, like, best friends?
Okay.
They became friends when they were filming The Killing Fields.
Okay.
And so John Malkovich was meant to be in this movie playing Ben Kingsley's part.
Oh, fuck yeah, that would have been fucking awesome.
Yeah. But then when Sands left, Malkovich is like, nah, I'm good. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
So then they got Ben Kingsley to come in as the hypnotist in this movie, which is so strange. He's trying to help
the gay
Morris
hypnotist. Yeah.
Hypnotize the gay out of him, I suppose.
Pretty much, yeah. He's like trying to, pretty much like
straighten him up.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, obviously, this is before, I think there was like indoctrination schools or something like that.
Oh,
where
like
they
gay
would
conversion
gay
therapy stuff. That's
conversion therapy.
horrible shit.
Yeah, so this is kind of him, in a nice way. He's doing his best Doctor Strange impression.
It's the worst it's one of the worst American accents I've ever heard. It sounds just like when Benedict Cumberbatch first got cast as Doctor Strange.
Why don't
and
you
his
sit
consonants
yourself
are
down
very
on that
hard and
table?
strange.
Yeah, very strange.
Ugh.
I want you to look at my finger. My finger is going to move.
Okay.
It's a little bit like Windows 95 automated speech. Like it's incredibly startling and robotic. Why don't I read you this letter? It's like,
It's
holy
really
fuck.
uncomfortable to watch, and
is,
luckily
yeah.
he's not in the film for very long.
No.
So you don't have to worry about it.
No, but to be fair, Ben Kingsley did play Gandhi, so he's kind of, he's a national treasure.
Love him.
Yes, it's just a shame that he's plopped in here and he's like, James, I don't know how to do an American accent. I'm British.
Why he even has an American accent is beyond comprehension anyway.
He didn't need to. I'm assuming it's because his character in the book has an American accent, but
Completely unnecessary.
it is completely unnecessary. But yeah.
So I have some info about the book, just a little bit, and kind of why, a little bit about King's College and stuff, which is where they filmed some of it. So E.M. Forster wrote this novel between 1913 and 1914, and it was only published after his death in 1971.
Okay.
But in his will, Forster left all the rights to his books to King's College, where he went to school, and they have a self-governing board of fellows of the college. So they didn't want to give permission to film Maurice. And it wasn't because of the book, it wasn't because of the subject matter, it's because they didn't think that the book is very good.
Wow.
And a film that would be made about it would be calling attention to the fact that it's an inferior work, and it wouldn't enhance Forster's literary reputation.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. But
yeah.
they convinced them otherwise.
Pretentious much?
Of course. They'll go, this isn't a very good
fuck.
book. Are you sure you want to make
Yeah.
a film about it?
It's like, let's drop a deuce directly into this poor man's dead body who wrote the book.
Like, I gave you all the rights to my works, and you're
I
saying...
know, he obviously
I'm-
liked your college. He marked it up quite fondly. He fucking went there. What the fuck?
This movie starts off very weird and very funny. It kind of got me right in the beginning. Do you remember? Because you have the teacher and you have a young Maurice, little blonde boy on the beach.
Oh, this is so weird.
And the teacher kind of takes him aside. I don't understand. It's so creepy.
God.
It doesn't end up being creepy, but the teacher takes him away from the group of other kids.
It does get a wee bit creepy.
Oh, it's totally weird.
Yeah.
So he gets him alone on the beach, and he's trying to kind of give him the birds and bees story,
Oh, God.
where he's talking about changes that's going to happen in your body and using Latin terms to talk about penises and vaginas. He gets a stick and he starts drawing dicks and vaginas in the sand to this kid who's probably 10, 11 years old.
Solidifying the fact that the scariest thing to a child is an old white man.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, come on, Bobby, let me show you something. It's like,
Here, come over
Really?
here. I'm gonna draw something for you.
to
in the
draw
sand.
some genitalia in the sand of the beach.
I'm gonna tell you about how your membrum virilis is going to grow and change.
Which is what I heard is member of Willis.
Yeah,
So, I don't know. Bruce Willis. And this is obviously pre-1910, so this is maybe just the turn of the century then, I'm
Yeah,
assuming?
it had to be.
Because in 1910 is when Maurice and stuff they're in university. So they must be at least, well, I don't know, maybe time's different. Maybe they went to university when they were 16, 17, but yes. It's turn of the century.
I just love that he's on the beach drawing kind of detailed vaginas and penises on the beach. Pretty big, too.
Yeah, like he's
showing
done it before.
This kid.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's fine. I mean, kids have penises and vaginas for the most part. So like they've seen what these things look like, at least to themselves, but it's just not cool coming from this dude alone on the beach.
It's kind of odd. Yeah. It's not the kind of tomfoolery you would expect from like a preteen drawing like a big dick on the sand in the beach, you know?
Why did he do that? I
With
don't
it.
understand.
It's a little bit well, it goes into like anatomical detail about how the penis goes into the vagina and how that then creates a child and all this sort of thing. And
Maybe
it's
it's just setting up the world of the straight people. Maybe
the conservatism of
like this
straight living
is what you will do. You will find a vagina.
Yeah.
You will put your penis in it and you will make
Yes.
babies, and this is what we do here. And there's no other way about it. Maybe that's just setting that
Yeah.
up for people. I don't know.
Don't put it in the butthole. You
No,
can't
no,
make
no.
a baby like that. No,
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 no.
no.
It doesn't go in the butthole. I mean, it can, but it's not going in the butthole.
No. That is not
no butt play
God's
for
plan.
Morris. God says no. Did Jesus do butt stuff? I don't think so.
I've never asked him.
I don't know. I mean, was he real?
Oh. I want to talk about Hugh Grant. Come on.
He's so good. He's so good in this movie. And the minute he shows up, he's all fresh-faced.
Oh man, that hair. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's incredible. He's wonderful.
Oh, I was looking for this concerto, and
I was looking for the third movement.
I was looking for the... Yes. I was going to make a poop joke about the third movement, but anyway, I'm not going to.
It's so. I don't know. Where are we going from here? There's this moment. So they become friends, right? So Morris and Clive become friends.
They meet, yeah.
And they become fast, close friends.
Mm-hmm.
There's a moment where Morris.
They have a wild night with the auto piano.
They do. They have a great time. They have so much fun.
Yeah, they
But
do.
he like pops a cigarette into Clive's mouth.
He does. He pops a fag in his
He
mouth.
like throws it
Yeah.
in his mouth and he catches it.
And they wrestle.
And they wrestle.
They have a wee wrestle, yeah.
You're damn right they wrestle.
Yeah.
And he rolls him up in the rug and just straddles him, and I was screaming. I loved it.
There's a moment just before the auto piano thing as well, where there's some sort of insinuation that one of them isn't as smart as a chicken cutlet or something. And I've got that in my notes, and I was like, what is that all about? Anyway, they do end up having a little wrestle. Doesn't he roll him up in the carpet?
He sure does, yeah.
He does. He rolls him up in the carpet.
That's
Look
what I
at
just
these,
said, and he straddles him.
these boys having wrestling times in the university. I never did that in uni. I mean, admittedly, I didn't have a rug, but I mean, I didn't do much wrestling with other boys in university.
Like the Greeks.
I guess.
Like, as they say in the film, the unspeakable vice of the Greeks.
Wow, look at you paying attention.
I did.
You did.
They said that, and I went, uh-oh. Looking at these boys.
Yeah.
They're just having a little Greek wrestle.
It's like women in love.
They keep talking about Greece and the Greek and how it's almost like a safe space for them in a way. And everyone else talks about it as though, Greece, it's only for pleasures. It's only a place for people to get down and dirty. So they're like, the boys should never go to Greece, even though the boys think of it as kind of like a safe haven.
It's yeah, but I think we've brought stuff up like this before because we've been in Naples. You know about like kind of the Roman influence in society.
I haven't
and
been
things
to
like
Greece.
That.
I haven't seen
been to
the
Greece,
penises of Greece yet.
But it's all kind of like that deconstruction, like the advent of conservatism into Western society, where you kind of forget that, oh look, the streets are littered with like phallic imagery and there's symbolic reasoning behind it all, and sex isn't really this taboo thing. It's it's depicted in what would you call is it fresco?
There's frescoes, yes.
Like it's depicted in these old
Frescoes, pottery, sculpture.
there's an openness about sex and sexuality and things, where, you know, the idea of homosexuality isn't that much of a taboo.
No.
So I do understand that, like, they would obviously bring that up, even though there's probably not a distinct understanding, and there's, like, obviously a navigation of how, you know, how their feelings are beginning to blossom, I suppose. You know,
Absolutely.
And I think that's the film does a very good job of depicting these feelings. I think James Ivory is very good at that.
He would know.
And this is, well, again, this is a very kind of, like, this is a story of unrequited homosexual love, you know, and it's something that he's kind of like shits the bed at the end. But it's like, but it's kind of like, yeah, I feel like, you know, yeah.
Okay.
Call Me by Your Name is probably a much better kind of telling of this.
Well,
of
who
this
wrote
kind
the
of story.
screenplay for that?
Exactly, James Ivory. So he was
still
very
pissed
used to it.
to this day that they didn't put nudity in Call Me by Your Name, and I fully agree.
Yeah, they kind of missed
He's like,
it.
why would you do that? He's like, I've done this before. I know what I'm doing.
If James Ivory can get the amount of nudity in his films and it feels completely fucking innocuous, I don't understand why there's any sort of issue with that in films now. Because at no point am I watching it and I go, oh my god, this is far too much. Like, it completely makes sense.
Yes.
In the same way that it made sense with The Room with a View, like when we obviously, you know, when we get to those moments in this film. Because before then, we've got that wicker chair cuddle.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I want to talk about this for 5 hours. Just this moment, because it opens really close on Clive's face, and he just has his head leaning on a thigh. Whose thigh? I don't know. Just a thigh. And then it kind of moves out a bit, and then you see a little bit more, and then you see a hand stroking Clive's hair, okay? And you just see this, and you don't see anything else. You go, whose hand is that? What's going on? What's happening? And it pulls back a little bit further, and you go, oh, that's Maurice's hand, and that's his thigh, and they're having like a little cuddle.
Having a
really
slow creaks and cracks of the
so
wicker
good.
chair. Yeah.
And then Clive kind of looks up. Doesn't he grab his hand?
Yeah.
And then he gives him kind of a tight hug, and then they're trying to figure out what's going to happen next.
Yes.
This incredible tension between them.
It's
sexual tension.
Smoldering,
yeah.
I would say. But then it was also kind of like, once it happened, I was just like, I remember having a wicker chair in my house when I was growing up as well. And I was like, I wanted to ask you, like, do you ever have like a wicker chair?
Yeah.
They're so noisy when you sit in them as well. But there's also, like, I mean, I remember, because this all kind of conjured up. I mean, I was in and out of the movie quite a fair amount. I was, like, thinking about certain things. But then I was like, I also remember when I was younger, we had, like, a big swing chair. So it was kind of like not like a sex swing, not like that, not like, what's her face in that movie? Yeah. It's like the sex swing in our front room of our basement house.
Yeah.
No, it was kind of like, it was like a cocoon seat, and it was kind of like elevated off the ground, and you could sit in that.
Yeah, that sounds, well, I mean, we're products of the 80s.
Yes.
So
like an Elizabeth Taylor, like in a sex swing, like swinging back and forth. Like, that's
what were
not
those
what we
chairs
had.
that were like, they were also, I think, made of like wicker or bamboo, and they sat on a little thing, and it was like a round bowl, and it had like a big cushion in the middle. It was like a Papadon?
Yes.
Is that what that's called?
Those also exist.
Papadom.
But I think the Papadom. Yeah, the Papadom
The
wicker
delicious
chairs.
Papadom wicker chairs.
Ooh, I could murder some Indian today.
Hell yeah. Wait, that just sounded...
Some Indian food. Yeah. I know, yeah.
Obviously.
Sorry, I sometimes struggle with my colonial roots and keeping them at check. But no, I would say that, our friends, they have one that looks very similar to that. It's black, that's in their back garden.
Yes.
That sort of thing. So imagine that, but it's like
everyone
elevated.
imagine our friend's chair that's in their backyard.
Imagine a cocoon wicker chair with a nice soft cushion in it, and it's elevated off the ground in a kind of swing fashion. I have no idea why my mother decided to buy that and why she thought it was a good idea.
Those are cool.
They are cool, but it's also kind of like, if you know, because I was young, and
what happened to you in this chair?
Nothing. I remember sitting in the chair. I remember
Okay.
falling asleep in that chair.
You're gonna have a sexual awakening in that chair.
No, I don't know where.
Like
Well,
Morris.
you know about my sexual awakenings. You know all about them. You know how disgusting they were.
Yes, dear.
Yeah. So, anyway.
So they get this moment of embrace, and they're kind of building up this sexual tension, and they're finally kind of figuring out that their relationship is slightly more than platonic. And doesn't someone just like burst into the room? And I think I yelled, "Hide your boners, gentlemen."
Yeah, something like that. Well, they burst into the room from the wicker chair cuddle. I've also got written down in here, because there's not really, like, there's a window creep and a kiss.
There's a window creep and kiss
Yeah.
by Morris, creeps into Clive's room.
Yes, and then the next thing we know is
Which
that they're
I
kind of
think
kissing
might-
on the grass.
But well, we can go into that scene too, because I
Okay.
think that window creeping kiss is the only lip kiss that they have together.
No, in the drawing room when they have that argument, he like kisses
Oh,
him so
it was like a
forcefully,
forceful kiss.
he like busts open his bottom lip.
Yeah, okay.
It's like,
Well, because after this moment, I think Clive is really having a struggle, and he's trying
Yeah.
to figure out. Maybe he's trying to figure out his sexuality. Maybe he's also trying to figure out if he really like has those type of feelings towards Morris. You know?
it's also kind of within the sphere of their social group. There also is a character who meets a man in a bar and then tries it on with the man that he meets in the bar. Basically like a bellboy, right? A busboy.
Yeah.
He meets him in the bar and he tries to kiss him, but it's kind of like a sting operation.
Yes.
And he gets arrested, and obviously he goes to prison. And this is someone that Clive's known, either from university or he's known from work and stuff.
No, they all know them. They all went to school together.
Yes.
They
but
were all
it's-
in those fancy book reading classes.
But it's also a major kind of awakening that, like, the society that they live in will not accommodate their current feelings. And you can see how Clive's kind of descent kind of begins with, he's saying he's saying things and kind of in the presence of Morris to be like, look at these ladies, aren't these the ladies? Hello, ladies, all this
Don't we
sort of
love
stuff.
these
Oh,
girls?
don't we love the pretty girls? All this sort of stuff. And yeah, I mean, he can't control his homosexual urges, so he faints. And he can't stop crying.
Yes.
Which I always was like, I thought was, for whatever reason, I
goes-
thought was most hilarious.
Oh, I say, I'm going to faint.
Oh, I'm going to faint.
Oh, I
And he
say.
falls over. It's
Yeah,
pretty much-
those immorality charges really got to him, and then he realized that he's in for some troubles.
It's
Or he thinks he's in for some troubles if he continues
yeah.
in this love affair.
that court case, because obviously, like, this is the the 1910s, right? Women have no other place other than in the home, right? Let's just say that, or they're working, or like the only other women we see, other than the ones that we see in this kind of privileged society, is the lassie in the bar in the pub who's pouring the pints.
Well, you also have the people working in the house.
And and there's also the women working in the house. So obviously there's this is before
You working or you looking good?
Well, also the women don't really have any rights. They're trophies. But he just can't. He's like, we can't be gay because the gayness is making him sick. Like he just can't. He emotionally cannot deal with it. Even the doctor who comes in, he's just kind of just like, all right, what now? Fuck's sake. Kind of just deals with it.
Do you really think that it was the immorality charges of their friend and his struggle with his own sexuality that made him faint? Or do you think that he kind of fell out of love with Maurice because of his mustache?
I mean, whether or not I think that that's the case, it's obvious that that is what's happened here, is that he was overcome by his own gayness, that he just couldn't deal with it anymore.
So it wasn't the mustache.
So you can track how out like these guys are by the appearance or say disappearance of a mustache. Because Maurice and Clive also, like, they
alternate mustache time.
They alternate mustaches to the point where it's like the passing of the gauntlet, right? The mustache passes from Clive. Oh no! It passes from Maurice to Clive at one point,
and then Clive, I think, keeps it for the most part of the film.
Yeah, so you're at your straightest when you have a mustache. Is pretty much what the film's telling me. Is that Clive is married to a woman, and he has the mustache, and he continues to have that mustache for the remainder of the movie. And Maurice never gets the mustache back.
No,
because he is gay.
Yeah,
and obviously that is kind of the visual motif that I took from it. But honestly, it couldn't be any more straightforward than that, is that we see literally a mustache on Maurice's face, and then in the next scene, Clive has a mustache, and we just couldn't deal with it.
I cried. I was laughing so hard with the mustache switch. It was wild.
Yes.
Because it was right at the moment where you really start thinking about those mustaches.
He was passing...
pass the torch.
He passed this straight mantle, and he continued with the straight mantle all up until the end, obviously the end of the movie. I mean, I'm going to point this out. I also have a mustache. I don't know who I got it from.
Did you get it when you... I don't know, Ryan. I think you got it when you married me.
I'm the straightest man you know.
Now that you have the mustache.
Pretty much. I think, yeah. It was honestly like that was like maybe the most interesting visual motif thing that we saw in the entire film. I think it was a completely unexpected and totally not deliberate thing that happened in the film that we just found hilarious.
I loved it. So let's dive into this first penis scene, if you don't mind. Do you mind?
No, I think this is a perfect time to do this.
At 1 hour and 8 minutes, this kind of comes in when you have Maurice who starts working out at a boxing gym.
It's also very weird. This is a weird kind of... Well, he's sending letters. Clive and Maurice are still sending letters to each other, communicating what they're doing and things like that. And, he ends up... He's training people at a boxing gym?
I don't know how he could train anyone. He doesn't look very good at it.
He went to university for a couple of weeks, and he's obviously slightly more... It's old-timey boxing as well, and I do love the guy that you see when it's first kind of tracks into this boxing gym. You see the guy, and it's kind of like... He's like rotating his fists in the way that they do is like old-timey. Because you would expect them to have a big handlebar mustache when they're beating the fuck out of each other. But yeah, he's teaching people how to box, I guess. And then he ends up obviously in the changing room with all these manly men's.
And I mean, you know better than me what it's like when you go into a locker room at a gym and how many naked dudes are around.
Yeah, I've
slapping each other with towels.
I've spoken about that ad nauseum.
It's just like this movie.
The YMCA is a very kind of precarious place. You keep your head down and you get dressed and you get out.
Yeah.
But
that's not what Maurice wants to do.
You don't want to get a spare hog like catching your thigh. You don't want that.
But these guys are just in the shower having some towel slaps, and Maurice is kind of in his...
I'll be slightly more specific. They're in what is effectively the washroom, and there's a bucket of water. There's like 4 or 5 guys naked, and they're like... There's a bit of tomfoolery with the bucket of water, and... There's
a lot of men on show in this particular moment, and they're all having a nice time in their platonic love with one another in the shower room.
This is kind of like always find stuff like this weird. It's kind of like when people say that, like, that moment in Top Gun, and it is kind of a little bit gay. Like, it kind of feels gay. And that volleyball scene where everyone's just like, well, it's a little bit homoerotic, is it not? And it's kind of like, well, it seems to be perfectly okay to be a straight man, but then in these, like, very specific scenarios, be completely naked and, like, have fun and fool around and stuff like that, because that's what happens in A Room with a View as well. That primary scene is like,
Yes.
Nobody's in love with anybody, but they're just like, we're enjoying each other's company and we're naked and we're just like, yay. And it seems perfectly fine for that to never be construed as a moment as potentially, like, homoerotic.
Correct.
But it's also kind of like, it's inherently more homoerotic because you're all naked and you're all just like, it's just like one step removed from, because, like, there's that moment in Can't Stop the Music as well. Like, that's one of the primary parts of that. They all go to the YMCA. And they're all naked in the kind of like the steam room / like washroom and stuff like that. And they're all just like, yeah, well, it's a little wink and a nod to be like, well, we're not gay, but we could be, like, that sort of idea where it's like, well, yeah, this is the place to be because it's like, it's where men can be men, all this sort of thing. But it's like, it's a wink and a nod to that kind of idea. So I always find things like that kind of weird. And that, yeah, it's kind of like this double standard that I just kind of, I don't fully understand. But
well, I think it's just an interesting idea to have Morris, who is struggling with his well, I don't think he's struggling with his sexuality.
He's not struggling
necessarily,
with it,
at least at this point, because he does hire that hypnotist.
He does eventually, but I think it's kind of like, yeah, it's a weird one. I think like as a visual thing, like as a visual moment, this part does help to. It's a good bit for obviously what the film's story and what they're trying to tell with Morris and his character and his development and stuff like that is, like, even in his best efforts to, I guess, like, straightify himself to a certain degree, which is obviously the greatest degree in which he would be considered probably the most straight, would be he has to marry a woman or have a relationship with a woman. But he's going to a boxing gym. He's hanging out with other men, presumably other straight men who are doing very straight things in a straight environment. And he's just not able to escape those feelings that he's effectively, he is burdened by an inability to enact the feelings that he's feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's looking on at these men who are just running around having a good time, and he feels a loss.
Wink and a nod. They're doing normal straight things in a straight environment, supposedly. Wink, wink. Inverted commas, obviously.
He misses his man. And I think, isn't this around the same time that Clive is in Greece or that already happened, right? That was the time where...
That already happened. Oh, okay. I thought you were going to bring up Anne Woods.
I don't even bring her up at all.
I do, because she's got touching slugs. Her eyebrows are horrific.
Is that Clive's wife?
Yeah, Anne Woods. I called them, like, they're touching slugs. They're like kissing slugs that are, like, on the top of her head. They are the biggest, bushiest... Well, you do, because I have the same fucking eyebrows. But I still look at it and I'm just like... That is dangerously close to a monobrow. It really is.
It was so painful because he's getting married, right? So Clive's getting married to this chick, Anne, and he and Morris haven't talked in a while, right? Just after this kind of breakup and this struggle. And Morris is trying to keep in touch, but he hasn't heard back from Clive in ages, right?
Yeah.
And he gets on the phone and with Anne... And she's like, oh, you're the 8th one of Clive's friends that I've talked to today. He goes, 8th? And I'm like, that's so mean.
It's pretty mean. And I'm like, what are they doing on the phone? Are they just declaring that they've gotten married or he's in a relationship?
That they've gotten engaged.
They've gotten engaged.
And they're inviting him out to the
manor.
House.
To the Clive Manor.
To the Pendersley.
Yes, to the Durham estate. Yeah, he's... Clive has done everything in his power to hide his
like history with
his homosexuality, effectively, which is, you know, over the course of the film, his journey is, you know, it's slightly more interesting because he's actually taken active steps to disguise the fact that he obviously has feelings for other men. And he's in a societal way, because obviously society and his decisions and the career choice that he has made, it will not gel with the modern. It just won't gel with the world that his choices. So he has to obviously create the veneer that he is the prototypical high class man.
And there are some people that prefer their careers and their professional lives over love.
Yes,
so
big time.
He maybe just cared more about living in that societal dream and having his career rather than being with Maurice. And I really, really do think that throughout this whole thing, that Maurice is obviously way more into Clive than Clive is into him.
Yeah.
And because Maurice never stops really loving him and being hurt, even though they hang out all the time, especially after Clive gets married. He's there at Pendersley all the time.
Yeah, it's
and he's just like not being a little puppy boy about it and following him around, but you know that he's only there because he loves him.
Yeah, he has taken active steps that have probably taken him years to effectively indoctrinate himself and to bottle up his feelings, to the point where he is very negative about the feelings that Maurice has towards other men, when he starts obviously confiding him about his his leanings, and obviously the things that kind of happen later on in the story, because this is when we introduce Scudder.
Oh my gosh, Scudder.
And who the fuck would fall in love with a man whose surname is fucking Scudder? Scudder.
He didn't choose that name.
He didn't choose that name, but it's also like, it was written that way.
Yes.
It could have been fucking anything. Hammersmith.
Well, because he's an uneducated man, and he's of a lower class.
He's a bit... The thing is, like, well, yeah, I think I called him a simpleton. You said, well, Ryan, it's probably easier to say uneducated. And I was like, yeah, that's probably a little bit more.
Because I do not think he's simple.
Correct.
I do think that he just obviously didn't go to school, because that's not how he grew up. His father was a butcher, and he's the gameskeeper now.
And I don't know what it is. Well, yeah, I was calling him the lawn boy.
Yeah, I did call him I think he does the lawns, I said. And we're like, oh, no, he's the gameskeeper.
Oh, dear. Yeah, but he's an interesting predicament in the course of the story.
And this guy, I mean, it takes hours. This movie, Scudder doesn't come in until kind of towards the end.
Fucking near the end, yeah.
Like more than halfway through the film, because we're following Clive and Maurice the whole time. And I'm thinking, like, this is a story of their love.
Yeah.
And how... Because I didn't read the description beforehand. I kind of went in blind. I knew a little bit of what it was about, but I thought that this is a story of them getting together and their love story. But it's not.
The only thing I would say about the fact that they don't follow that, I guess, that particular tract, is that eventually it starts to become a little bit dull. This whole kind of like, does Clive love me? I don't think Clive loves me. Does Maurice love me? I don't think Maurice loves me. All this sort of thing. And they're like meeting his friends, and he's like desperate to get him to the estate and all this sort of thing. It becomes this kind of cyclical, like nothing kind of, there's like in terms of like the tension or the drama or like the problems that the characters face scene by scene by scene, is that it's like there's this level of reciprocation. So I am glad that Scudder shows up.
Yeah, because it's never going to happen between he and Clive. It's just never, like, there wasn't a moment.
No, it kind of just becomes a little bit. You're just kind of like, oh, all right, here we go
also,
again.
Also, because Clive starts acting like a dick.
He does start acting like a bit of a...
a better than you, oh, you're still more gay than I ever was. And
he basically turns into
talks down to him all the time.
Yeah, he turns into the modern day cis male.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like, well, I don't do shit like that anymore.
It's like, I was barely even gay.
I wasn't gay. We were kissing. There's nothing gay with men kissing, is there? It's like,
It was a platonic kiss.
it's a platonic. You know what it is. You don't lie, Maurice.
But we get some really not platonic and romance kisses when we get this scene where Scudder climbs in to Maurice's window.
Nice. Scudder does a Cadbury's milk tray moment and jumps in through the window.
He does a window sneak, but it's not a window sneak and kiss. It's a window sneak and fuck. And it's awesome.
He fucks the lawn boy. Yeah,
he sure does. The
lawn boy.
He sure does. And they have a great time.
They do. Yeah, this was the part where I fell asleep or something. You woke me up.
It was right before. You fell asleep right before. Yeah. I was like, I'm turning this off because it's going to get hot and heavy.
He's creeping in the window. It
was worth every moment we waited.
Well, there's this other bit here that I remember where he's like, because there's a fair amount of like, so like as they're kind of like undressing and he's like, Scudder's kissing his chest and stuff like that. Scudder keeps on calling him sir, and Maurice just pulls him in and he goes, I'm Maurice. Which I loved.
5 stars.
I loved it, yeah.
So good.
Don't call me sir in the bedroom. It's Maurice.
And this is probably Maurice's first real full sexual experience.
Yeah, and also probably Scudder's as well. But the thing is, well, it's maybe not his first sexual experience, but maybe what I mean is like it's his first kind of romantic experience.
Like a full reciprocation.
Well, the thing is like he's expecting that reciprocation, but what you do kind of get from Scudder is that, Maurice is obviously playing it quite close to his chest. He doesn't want to obviously proclaim, use the word love at this point and think, but then it's obviously coming across to Scudder that Scudder's just like, well, I need you to come. I need to see you. We need to do this. He is falling head over heels for Maurice.
Yeah, and Scudder's like, I'm not going to be your fuckboy.
You
better write me back.
Yeah, you better write me back. You better come to the boathouse.
I'm not some one-night stand. I'm special.
Here. I stayed in that boathouse for 2 nights waiting for you,
cold.
And you never showed up. I was tired, and it's like, okay. But then there's also, this is where the film actually gets quite interesting, though, is that they're meeting now in secret. Scudder's coming to his place at work, and he's coming in there
confrontational,
and you're like, I'm saying things like blackmail. I'm saying like, what's his problem? Like, there's a point where they meet Simon Callow again in the museum or wherever it is, because there's all those artifacts from like Persia. Like all those things, like from isn't that like the Valley of the Kings? Like, isn't that like the gates to the Valley of the Kings in the Middle East or something like that? Or am I just? It's the same location from the Last Crusade. That doubles over as the site of the Grail. Anyway, let's say, but they meet Simon Callow, and
this is so weird.
Fucking Scudder says that really weird thing where he's just like, because I'm just like, well, it's blackmail. He's just like, well, I've got something against this man.
I have some serious charges to bring against this man. And it's the first thing he says when Simon Callow's going up to Maurice going, wait, I think I know you. I think I was your teacher, which would be completely impossible for him to recognize as an adult man. Yeah. That's so stupid.
I remember drawing genitalia on the beach that one time when you were a young boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did that interaction happen? I don't even know. I don't know if it's just to like, because it could have been anybody.
Laura, teachers are weird. Some of them are just weird. And I remember I
didn't trust this guy.
Well, I started telling people stories from work, from my school, because everyone kept on going on about like, oh my God, I can't believe sometimes we had to shower after gym. And I was just like, well, we had a convicted child rapist as a history teacher at our school. And then we also had a gym teacher who almost assaulted young girls at our school. And everyone's like, oh. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I think you guys maybe potentially having a shower together isn't really that much of a big deal in comparison to that story. That story about that history teacher is wild. That story ended with that history teacher being murdered and found in a wheelie bin after he came out of prison. It is unbelievably fucked. I do remember the man's name. I'm not going to say it, but all that story stuff, it's all still online to this day. It is wild.
Yeah, send us a message and Ryan will send you the link.
I will send you the link to.
Did I ever tell you about the story about we had a substitute history teacher?
Okay.
This is bad.
Oh, God.
And I think that's the first pair of balls I ever saw because
no.
he was in class and he took his pants down behind the desk. And so he was just sitting behind the desk in his chair
What the fuck?
with his pants down. And I think I maybe dropped something and I went to bend down and grab it. And I looked over. I was like, oh my God, that's that guy's dick and balls in class.
Hey.
And of course I went around and told everybody. And then obviously he was escorted off the premises.
This isn't
high school.
This isn't a slight against people who are like actively, you're good teachers and you're nice to your students and stuff like that. But there's a percentage of people who are like, because most of us don't like children. I mean, to be fair, most of us don't like kids.
No, this is not a slight against teachers whatsoever because
you wouldn't choose to work with children.
All of the teachers need to get paid more.
Unless you're a weirdo. Unless you're a fucking weirdo.
But that's just because the world is weird and there's weirdos everywhere. And so you're always going to get a little bit of weird wherever you are. And unfortunately, we both have stories about...
Yeah. Well, yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, luckily I wasn't anyone's pudding. I wasn't that like in school.
Correct. Neither was I.
Yeah, so I'm quite happy of that fact. But yeah, I mean that story just blows my fucking mind every time I think about it.
Teacher in this movie is one of those weird ones, even though he doesn't necessarily do anything too weird, but it definitely comes across weird.
Like he oversteps his bounds. Like it's strange.
I still don't know why he would take him aside as a child. So strange. But yeah, that moment because Scudder's here, and it does seem like he's...
Here's the thing. Maybe he took him aside because he could see things in that child that was maybe kind of a little bit... Because we don't know what Maurice was like as a kid. Maybe he saw things in that child where he's like, huh, he's doing kind of weird... He's doing kind of... Like, he's not looking at women the same way, or like he's got like a weird attraction to some of the other boys in the school. Maybe like something like that. I'm not defending Simon Callow's character here because I still think it's fucking odd. Yeah. You shouldn't be doing that. But at the same time, that is a slight defense of the creepo.
That I did also think about it, but we don't have enough reference to make that.
No, it's not in the movie. So how? No. Like I'm just making these assumptions unless it's in the book. But supposedly the book's a horrible piece of literature according to the King's College.
Cambridge.
So who knows? I mean, if they don't even like the thing that they were gifted by the original author, then I don't really know what to say.
Maybe I should read that book.
Yeah, maybe you should, and then you can paraphrase it to me.
But it's an interesting thing at this moment because you have Scudder, and it looks like he's trying to blackmail Maurice, and Maurice is super conflicted. So you're over here going, he's blackmailing him, he's going to do something horrible, this is going to end really bad. And I go, I think he's just hurt. I think he's just upset that he feels jilted, that he feels used.
Yeah.
And I think he was saying that this was his first love affair with a man as well. And so he's feeling very vulnerable, and I think he just kind of came at him with a lot of energy that was a bit off. But when they finally ended up being able to speak about it, is where we have our second penis scene.
This is a scene that's kind of post-coital. They have sex on what looks like the tiniest bed ever.
It looks like the bed that we first had when we met.
Yes, except obviously I don't think the bed that they were sleeping in had like casters on it. And I mean, we broke that bed.
Yeah.
Eventually, to the point where I had to fix the bed and I had to take the casters off the bottom of the bed. Whatever,
that place was weird.
Yeah, well, your landlord was a fucking psychopath. So, but it's post-coital, and in kind of James Ivory fashion, everything's very innocuous. The nudity, it's also incredibly clear, and you can see it all. And he does these shots where cameras set. And the action plays out, and it's engaging. Like, he does a lot of these one scene oneers and stuff like that. And this is one of these moments where there's no real need to cut to a close up. There's no real need to kind of develop shoot any more than what we are just seeing here. So
Yeah.
it all kind of ends up with this kind of mid wide in this room, and they're conversing, they're talking. It's post-coital kind of interactions and stuff. And Scudder gets out the bed first, and because of obviously the way that it is, like, he comes around the bed, he's all completely naked. We're all seeing things completely there. And then he puts a shirt on, he starts Porky Pigging it, and then
Yeah.
and then Morris is in the bed, and then he starts to kind of sit up. We don't see as much of that because, again, I think the light's coming from the windows. It's all quite kind of backlit and stuff. So you're not seeing as much of that. But what you're kind of seeing, and kind of what I like about these interactions, and what I think is, be it, for worse or for whatever, like, in terms of, like, we've covered a lot of like westernized depictions of like homosexual kind of love stories. We've done like Brokeback, and we've obviously done this film here, and then obviously Short Bus as well, which obviously has quite a lot of that too.
Yeah.
So, I feel like Short Bus is the outlier because it feels it's a lot more casual. It's like, it's fun, like everyone's having a good time. It's
Yes.
all consensual. Everything's fine. That's not to say that Brokeback and stuff isn't there, but I feel like Brokeback and this movie share the same kind of general, I would say, like, cliches and principles of like westernized gay cinema, where the sex is rough, it's ready, it's two men just like, we're gonna have sex with each other, we love each other so much. And I to me, it kind of it comes across a little bit. This is a nice moment that kind of counteracts that level of cliche, I feel like.
I agree. There's a lot of tenderness here, especially after kind of the conflict that they had just previously,
Yeah.
where they're figuring each other out. Like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Where are we going with this? Like, is this a real thing, that we have between us? And they're able to have a cuddle and chat and be casual with each other, because guess what? When two people have sex, they get naked.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for that situation. And I love that casual nudity, because you want that kind of to be a reflection of what people deal with in real life.
It helps to solidify a level of realism to the experience.
If he got out of bed, especially as that character of Scudder, if he got out of bed with the blanket on, I'd go, what? That, he seems incredibly comfortable in his skin.
It'd be a weird scenario as well, because there's obviously two people in this bed. There's
no one else there.
Well, you're just taking the blanket away from the person who's already who's like continuing in the bed. So it'd be very weird. But it's kind of like, and it was, I don't know, this is kind of something I picked up on, but like, him having that moment, that sex, kind of calmed Scudder down a little bit, because he was getting a little bit mouthy.
Yes.
Like, it was just getting a little bit too much.
He had to get his rocks off, and then he's like able to be reasonable.
Yeah, because Scudder's obviously no bottom.
No, I don't think so.
It's obviously Maurice is the sloppy party. Like, it's obvious that Scudder's running the show.
We don't know what they did in bed. They could have just touched each other's bits and explored each other's bodies. We don't know what they did, but we know that it was all in love. All about love.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, that's that comes in. We kind of skipped over it. 2 hours, 1 minute, 38 seconds is that second penis scene, that love scene. So we're getting really close to the end of the film.
We are getting really close to the end of the film.
I literally have one other thing written about the film.
Oh, okay.
That's it. I don't know if you have more, but it's a conversation between Clive and Morris.
So I like that. Once Scudder comes into the picture, the film starts to become a little bit more interesting. And you're also, like, in the back of your mind, because of the conventions of this story, and certainly, like, of this story told within, like a westernized, like, I guess, like, the idealistic, like kind of you've got the idealistic blinkers on when you watch certain movies, and because obviously homosexuality is the outlier, you immediately go straight to the negative, right? So
Yeah.
you think there's gonna be death, there's gonna be the police, something bad's gonna happen.
Some trauma. Some guy's gonna find out that this guy's gay and beat him up. And also this post-coital scene, by the way, is when Scudder lets Maurice know that he's never gonna see him again, that he's leaving. He's leaving like tomorrow.
Yeah, because he's going to go on that mission, right?
To Buenos Aires.
Yeah.
And so this is it for him, even though Maurice is telling him, we can figure this out. We can be together. We don't need money. We don't need titles.
But he goes to meet him at the boat, right?
Yes.
And he doesn't show up. So Maurice is like, oh, he's sacrificing his career for me, which again is an incredibly selfish thing to think. I mean, he could have just thought to himself, well, no, I don't want to go to Buenos Aires to do religious stuff. But like, it's
this is the moment where like you were just saying, you're like, he's been beaten up, he's killed himself or whatever, and I'm like, no,
he's hung
it's love, he's okay, everything's okay, because we have to remember this is a James Ivory picture, and nothing really that bad happens in his movies. Everyone is having a nice time.
I mean, here's the thing, James says it himself in the featurettes on the Criterion disc that we have, where he's just like, you immediately go to the negative because that's what you expect.
Yeah.
Because of, the time period, this. And he's like, even he was surprised reading, obviously, the Forster novel, that it ends happily for the most part.
Yeah.
But I do, we'll get to the ending. I feel like we just kind of want to cover, I guess, the full indoctrination of, obviously, Clive. And he's just
so annoyed. I'm so annoyed by this conversation because Maurice, as soon as he finds out that Scudder didn't get on that boat, he immediately goes to Pendersley and he goes to talk to Clive. And he tells him, he goes, listen, I'm in love with Scudder. And for whatever reason, Clive, before he mentions that it's Scudder that he's in love with, he thinks he's talking about a woman. He goes, you gotta go talk to Anne. Women know women. How delusional are you? This man has never changed. Yeah. This man has been himself 100% of the time. He's never tried to be, he's never put into action trying to be something that he's not. No. Obviously, the hypnotism thing is silly and it's never going to work because you are who you are.
But the thing is then Anne does the sacred rite, and then that's when her slugs kiss.
Yes.
And she's able to foresee what happens in the future.
Whatever.
That's why Anne Woods is incredibly important to the story. That's just the scene that we never got to see. I wish we did.
Scene.
It's a deleted scene where
those magic slugs.
Those magic slugs
but
touch.
Clive is incredibly repressed. I think he's not a very good friend. And for whatever reason, he's appalled at the news that his friend that has been gay forever is also still gay.
Oh no!
Oh no, you're gay still!
I can't believe you're still gay.
How did that happen?
I
haven't been paying attention to your life.
And I have also been playing with you and having you come over and
touching your hand and being flirty,
kissing you on the cheek because I'm a big Hugh Grant flirt. Yeah, it's
a flirty asshole playing with this guy's
But it's heart. Also, here's the thing, and I like the kind of level of depth because the conversation isn't as surface level as that, because it's obvious that Hugh Grant is still harboring. He can't bury that stuff deep enough so that he can seemingly just get on with his prototypical, in inverted commas, normal existence. He cannot change the way that he is built. There's no way that he can do that.
And I also think that selfishly, Clive likes having that around. He likes having Maurice around. He likes the attention. He likes being able to kind of have that guy around and be flirty and mess with him. I think he likes that power.
And I think that's enough for him so he doesn't jeopardize the other things in his life.
Yeah.
I think that's basically it. And you can tell, there's moments within the movie, certainly I think Anne's asleep, and she sees or turns over and sees Clive getting dressed for bed and stuff, and she sees a little bit more than what she was expecting, and she turns over really quickly. So there's obviously a kind of divide, or at least a kind of, I mean, I guess like a kind of traditional divide between the two, where they don't see each other naked all the time, or there's not a kind of sense of like an open freeness with the nudity between them and stuff like that, which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah.
But his conversation is very much a kind of like, it's like he's warning him and telling him, like, 1, you can't be gay. 2, you have to stamp that shit out. He's like, 3, is the fucking therapy not working? Even the hypnotist is useless effectively.
Yes, obviously.
Because he's just like, I can't help you because you are distracted. I cannot put you to sleep. Like, all this sort of stuff, because obviously Maurice is too gay.
Well, it's nonsense.
Yeah, it's just not going to work. It's not going to work.
No.
But end of the day, he goes to the boathouse.
He finally goes to the boathouse.
And I'm like fully expecting to see Scudder like hanging off the rafters.
No.
And it didn't really happen. There's a fire going as well. Like, he's got a wee fire going.
He's got a romance fire.
He's probably
blazing.
been lying there for 4 days in a kind of sleepy trance.
It's only been a couple hours.
And I think it's like he sees him. He just sees him there. And even I was just like, what the fuck? Like, he's just there?
Yeah, he's waiting for him because he loves him. And they're going to be together.
Yeah.
And they embrace, and they have the wettest, sloppiest kiss I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And Scudder gets his wet lips right on his ear.
I just want to say this.
What does he say again?
We shan't never be parted.
We shall never be parted.
It's like, and you're just looking at it.
And I'm like, fuck yeah.
I mean, you look at it like it's an image, it's a moment. His lips are like soaking wet. He like gets them real close to like Maurice's ear, and he's like, we shall never be parted. It's just like hot fucking breath of death.
Okay.
Just fucking breathing into his ear.
I thought it was romantic and very,
okay.
very sexual.
I mean, I guess.
I was enlightened. I loved it.
Either way, the film ends very happily. And one of the nicest parts of the movie, and I'm glad they do it, is they do show Clive at the window, and he's looking out, and he has that little memory of when he saw Maurice out in the courtyard at the college, and he's like waving at him and stuff like that. And that was probably the most emotional part of the movie for me, because it's obvious that there's still something kind of harboring there just under the surface, you know.
But he's gonna let him go and have his love, and I thought that was very sweet.
Yes, he's going to conform to the norms of society of that time, and he's going to hide his homosexuality.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm assuming if we did continue with the story, let's say if the film was like 5 hours long or whatever, like I'm assuming they would not be able to keep their gay relationship. Scudder and Maurice, obviously, they wouldn't be able to keep their gay relationship as hidden as they would probably want it to.
I'm 100% okay with the movie ending where it is. I like a love story. It's beautiful. The struggles that they will face.
The issue is
obviously, and it's not even just about having that, you know, a homosexual relationship. It's even a class struggle between the two of them. How they're going to work it out, I don't know.
The issue I have with the ending, and this is all I'll kind of say about it, is the only reason it's a happy ending is that it completely excludes the potentials of reality coming into the story at any point.
And that's okay.
And that's fine, because it's obviously a happy
ending. That's how
ending.
Fairy tale endings all end as well.
Oh, yeah,
because you think about it, you go, wait
yes.
a second, this is going to not be great in a couple of years.
Yeah, every Disney film ends that way, you know? I'm pretty sure the Beast from Beauty and the Beast is probably not a nice person.
He's probably still an asshole.
He's probably a complete asshole, because he calls himself a fucking asshole. Well, not in the movie. It's not good. It's not Disney. It's like, I'm an asshole, Belle. I'm really sorry. But yeah, that's the issue I have with just the ending in general, is that it is the fairy tale ending, and it's like that kind of westernized ending. So I have to dock it a little bit for that, but that's the only way you get a happy ending in a story like this, I guess, of the time and obviously of the period and things like that. So
You gotta end it somewhere. Might as well end it there.
yes, I wish it ended an hour before though. Like that would have been nice.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
a
it
little,
doesn't have to
yes,
be
it's a little
that
too,
long.
yeah, it's too long,
bit too
really.
long.
Yeah.
That's okay. Would you like to hear my extra tidbits before we wrap this bad boy up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, because Hugh Grant and James Wilby knew each other, because they were in the movie Privileged, that's the name of the film from 1982, they practiced their scenes together at Hugh Grant's house. And Hugh Grant remembers it being a surprise to my banker brother when he came home and found me kissing James Wilby in my front room.
I mean, it's probably not the first or the last time
I hope
that's
not.
ever happened. Yeah. So
The film had no rehearsal time whatsoever. The production was 54 days and had 6-day working weeks, which is interesting because James Ivory said that he picked this particular book and adaptation to make this film because he thought it would be very simple. And then it ended up spiraling a bit and being a little bit more difficult than he expected. And I find it surprising that he thought this was going to be easy because,
yeah.
I mean, it looks expensive.
It looks expensive. It looks like it took a long time. It looks like it needed
Polished, it's beautiful, the costumes, like everything is gorgeous.
I think James Ivory, I don't know if this is like kind of early on. It probably isn't, but because of he's got a team, and I think he's got an incredibly disciplined team, because Ivory Merchant, obviously productions just as a unit, like it's an incredibly polished production team making films of this ilk for years, for decades, effectively. So this is either like teething idea, and I'm kind of assuming it's either teething issues, obviously, or there are certain elements within the production where you're just kind of like, okay, we need to take a little bit more time with this, because the film itself feels very delicate as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Let's see, what else do I have? So in 2017, The New Yorker did a retrospective on the film and stated, for many gay men coming of age in the 80s and 90s, Maurice was revelatory, a first glimpse, on screen or anywhere, of what love between men could look like.
Yeah. At least it feels very honest, because it's not like over exaggerated, but it's honest for the period it's depicting though, which is something that I also like.
I'm still happy it's just a nice gay love story, instead of just trauma.
I guess so. I think that's obviously kind of where things kind of go. I mean, I like the fact that it's like none of the cliches of what you would expect from quite an outwardly gay, like, say, film of like now. Like kind of what you expect from, say, certain films of that type now. It feels incredibly grounded.
Yeah.
So because I have like there's a real kind of not to say that these films are bad, but like we've seen films in the last kind of few years that have been kind of outwardly kind of pieces of like gay cinema, which I don't feel like are contributing to the overall message of gay cinema, which has been going on for decades. Gay cinema, in terms of like queer cinema in general, is decades old. It is as old as the birth of film,
Yeah,
as well. So I feel like this, in a way, this movie adds to that pantheon more so than even with decades worth of experience and knowledge, and I would say even like societal acceptance of homosexuality, that many modern films, I feel like, either dwindle away or they just don't add to the conversation, and they feel kind of a little bit shallow. At least with this, it feels like it's like, okay, historically this is an interesting part in history, and it does have a happy ending.
yeah.
So
Okay, so James Ivory said about the filming of of Maurice and kind of the nudity aspects of it. He said that Everyone really got into the thing, and even though that was 30 years ago, there was no fear about the subject matter or worrying about what people would say. The only difference, and it may be a difference in the two nationalities, is that Maurice was made in England, and they do not give a damn about taking their clothes off and being completely naked. And that has all changed. It's very, very rare in any kind of mainline movie where anybody takes all of his clothes off. Unlike women. I see them naked all the time, but not men anymore. So that was different.
I think a lot of it has to do with the mass marketability of films now, where the budgets are so fucking huge. Like, they're massive. Even films that you think are relatively quite small, the budgets are absolutely astronomical, and that's because they're trying to tap into the Chinese market as well. So this is obviously, unless you're perfectly happy with being as independent as you want to, you can make as real a story as you like. You're just not getting any return of investment from it, and you're just not going to progress to the heady heights that you might do as a filmmaker. Like, that's just unfortunately the back and forth that many are dealing with now. And that's not to say that mainstream movies are good. I mean, naturally, mainstream movies, like the big budget films that you see now, they're not good. I wouldn't say like they're kind of, they're memorable pieces of cinema, but this is unfortunately just the kind of way we are now.
That's just what it is. It's terrible.
It's just not good. But you do see we saw Red Rocket a couple of years ago. There's plenty of films that are effectively streaming only, that are kind of exploring those things. And I mean, we'll kind of, we're going to cover a few of them over the course of this period, but it's where contextually, that's when we start to ask a lot more kind of questions, and then we talk about like, is this real? Like, this sort of idea.
Right. So an interviewer asked James Wilby if he regrets the nudity in the film, and he said, no.
Such a weird question as well.
I know. Well, he had a great answer. He goes, no, well, on one level it's about sex, isn't it? I think sex is about sweat and semen. So no, absolutely God no. It was quite tastefully done. I mean, it's mainly me, but the fact that coming out of bed with Rupert Graves playing Scudder and the fact that we're both naked, that's what happened. It's about sex and the need for sex and for all of us, and the closeness of another human body. That is life affirming, I think. Yeah.
No, I think it comes down to like, is your film honest or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was well achieved. The last little kind of quote I have is, apparently the question that James Wilby gets asked the most often is if he had any issues playing a gay character. And he said, he goes, it's more of an American thing, that American actors tend to have this problem about playing gay characters or characters which are perceived as weak.
Yeah.
British actors do not worry about it too much. I didn't write this down, but he also said, like, if someone asked me to play Hitler, I'd probably play him if it's interesting. Like, he's like, I'm an actor.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
I'll just do the acting because that's my job. So I'm kind of with him for that.
Yeah. No, I think it comes down to like how, to me, it always comes down to like how honest do you want your film to be? Yeah. And for the most part, I feel like modern cinema in general, at least now, it feels like there's a level of being disingenuous.
It's just oversaturation, because I don't want to just do that overarching thing that say that it's disingenuous, because there's a lot of films that we've seen some recently that are just that are honest and sweet and heartfelt, like we saw Past Lives the other day.
Yes, and that film's not about sex.
No.
There is no element about that that's overtly sexual.
It's just an incredibly nice film.
It's just about love and the emotion of love and connecting and human connection, that sort of thing. And it's just that's also a very honest film.
Yeah, so it's hard to say. You don't want to just say that, if we're talking about your Fast X and whatever, Spider-Man and all this type of stuff. Obviously, we have these these big movies that are doing something different than this film is doing.
But also Fast X has a very, very kind of outwardly quite metrosexual villain at the heart of it as well.
So good.
Which is interesting, because they think that stuff's okay to play out in a pantomime sort of sense in obviously the wider market. So, you know, I'm not using it as like a prime example. It's not like Pasolini or anything like that. Like that's, yeah, something like that's probably not going to fly like it did back then. But, or I mean, Christ, it didn't even really fly that well back then. But it's definitely, it's interesting to kind of, I like this idea of using it as like a sense of like how honest is your film trying to be. That's a far more cutting question than if an actor has an issue playing a gay man or not, you know.
There are a couple of accolades I'm just going to mention before we jump into our ratings.
Yeah.
But this had an Academy Award nomination for Best Costume Design.
Okay.
But lost to The Last Emperor. But James Ivory won the Silver Lion for Best Directing at the Venice Film Festival for this one.
Good. Yeah. Good. It's a good, and I think, you know, obviously the more we kind of cover his, it's like, it's solid film technique with like a very kind of emotional, center, which I think is good, you know.
Oh, I mentioned Thatcher before, but I don't think I went into detail. I just have a...
Okay.
So apparently the film did really well in Italy and in America, but did not do as well as England. And James Ivory blames Thatcher and the enactment of Clause 28, which were a series of laws across Britain that prohibited the, quote, promotion of homosexuality.
Yes. I mean, this
happened around 88 or so.
Yeah, and we don't need to go into it, but the Conservative Party at the time was actively weaponizing AIDS against the gay community.
Disgusting.
I mean,
how dare she?
They refer to it as the gay disease, that sort of thing. So it's it was a horrible time, but she's in the grave now.
Hurrah. So I'm going to go ahead and go first. In terms of visibility and context, for me, this seems like a home run 5.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you there. I
like
don't even think we need to. Yeah, we don't need to kind of
super casual and perfectly placed.
Placed within the context of the story and of their relationship. It would feel incredibly weird if Rupert Graves got out of that bed and he's wearing underwear.
Yeah, so that's exactly.
Strange.
You're talking about how honest is your film.
Yes.
Boom. Like that scene shows it perfectly.
Yeah, like it makes complete sense. So I don't have, and you know, the locker room moment is also incredibly honest because you're not, it's not like in some things that we see now where they're wearing like flesh panties.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like that bit.
Flesh panties and like a holographic overlain dick.
It's like we covered Lawn Dogs not too long ago, and the version, unfortunately, that most people are able to see for free on Tubi is the edited version where you see a Sam Rockwell dive into the river whilst wearing his underwear.
Yes.
And it's kind of like
the underwear cut.
It's also a very weird, disingenuous kind of thing to do, because who would then want to just wear their soggy underwear after that? It doesn't make any sense. So
not honest.
Yes, so I do like this inclusion of feeling like, you know, we cover things and giving it an idea of like how honest is your picture. Because of how disingenuous I feel a lot of modern media can be. And I mean media in terms of like content media, not the media. I don't want to be labeled as one of those crazy people who's like worried about the news all the time.
So are you with me on a 5?
I'm with you on a 5.
I wanted to call that. I don't know if I said it in a previous episode, but I wanted to call it pulling into the docking station when we share the same ratings.
I think you've brought it up before, but then I just kind of actively ignored it.
Yeah, you might. And in terms of the film overall, I gave it a 4. The only reason it didn't go higher, genuinely, is because it's really long. It could lose a lot and still be really, really wonderful. But it is a really pleasant film to watch, and I don't think that I don't think it loses too much momentum, but I think it could be tightened up a bit, personally.
Yeah, I feel like just because it has almost every single inclusion from the book inside the movie, that necessarily makes to not a good film that make watch, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
It doesn't need to be a perfect adaptation.
It doesn't have to be a perfect adaptation.
They did change
feel
stuff.
like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's fine when you're doing a book like a novelization kind of translation into like a cinematic sense, and that's okay if it feels like it's improving upon it. I feel like obviously Fight Club's a very good example of that. I think the film version's a better written piece than the book, but the book's a very good framework and has all the same ideas and stuff anyway. So, to each their own. But anyway, for me, it started off at a 3, and then obviously that first half of the movie, like that first hour and a half, hour 40 minutes, does get to the point of feeling a little bit dry after you feel like you get a little bit of the wetness at the beginning of the film. But there's the minute like the Scudder stuff starts to come up, and obviously, it's after the moment where the mustaches are swapped over. The film starts to get a little bit more interesting, and I gave it a 3.5 because I think that memory at the end of the movie between obviously Clive and Maurice. Or Morris, sorry.
Oh,
jeez, I did it again. Fuck. I thought I could do this. We've been in this an hour and 40 minutes. But yeah, no, I think there's that obvious, there's that stuff there that I feel like kind of elevates the film a little bit. But for me, it's far too long. It's just a little bit dry, and it has these really nice moments in it. And I like obviously all the honesty within the picture in terms of, the nudity and things. But it's just, yeah. And also, it's really unfortunate, just Willoughby's not able to deliver the sort of center performance that I want from a film this long.
Yeah.
When he is like dying of starvation when he's in other scenes with like even fucking Denholm Elliott, like who's like picture perfect, like fantastic in the role that he's in, and he's just dwarfing Willoughby.
Yeah.
In these moments, and obviously whenever Hugh Grant's around, it's game over for Willoughby, unfortunately. But yeah, it's still a good film though. I think for people who like a period film and a period film of like this, I think this is actually an interesting piece of gay cinema. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a little bit. It should be regarded higher. It's just a shame it's just a little bit too long.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I liked it. Yeah, happy.
Good.
Well, thank you so much. I was so glad we got to do this movie. It's been on the list for a long time, and it paid off for me.
There was a little
cleaning it up that ivory.
Yes, I think there's more ivory to come.
Yeah, there is. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Great.
Well, coming to you from the Pendersley Boathouse, I have been Laura.
We shan't never be parted.
Oh, that's
because we're in love.
That's
great.
And
yeah, we're in the boathouse.
Be
I'm writing
forever.
Barely legible letters in the boathouse.
Great.
Let me construct a sentence for you, my love.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for being here.
Yay.
Bye-bye.